So,
John, if it's okay, I'm going to give her my blooper, what I'm going to talk about
please.
as an example, because she and I, because we're on the technical side, actually have some of the same traits from that readout. So
He's a bug-eyed monster like you?
Yes.
Welcome to an all-new episode of Work in Progress with John Lane and Will Barfield. This podcast explores leadership traits under stress with a special guest each week. We use a simple and accurate OAD assessment to identify key personality traits or superpowers, as well as the shadow side, kryptonite traits that appear when we're under stress. As always, we'll have some pod banter, shameless plugging, and we'll even let our guests talk for a bit. Of course, no humble brags. Welcome to the show. Welcome, everybody, to our 55th episode of Work in Progress with John Lane and Will Barfield. Hi, Will.
Hello, John.
Notice anything about me?
You are wearing that sling thing.
I am. So the long ago discussed shoulder surgery happened a few weeks ago, and I'm wearing this. I'm 3 weeks in. I think I'll be out in 4, but we're calling this the one-handed, left-handed episode because I am mega right-hand dominant, and I've been working on doing things left-handed these last 3 weeks. And so we'll see if the show comes off okay. I have no idea. It could crash and burn.
I'm looking forward to observing your ambidexterity.
It's getting there.
Susan, I've made this joke several shows in a row. The reason John's shoulder is out of whack is because he was carrying the show for so many episodes that he
I like that. Yeah, I should have used that myself. Can we start over? Can I take that?
No.
All right. So I don't have my trusty remarkable because I can't write. I can manage the show lefty. I cannot write legibly left-handedly. So I'm pulling banter up. I'll give you a piece of banter.
Let's go.
I now can put on socks with one hand very easily.
Your left?
Yeah.
How about eating? Have you been able to eat?
Oh, look at me. Yeah, that's not been a problem. I don't eat a lot of soup. Let's be clear. But no, the way you put on socks with one hand is, Susan, if you want to go get a drink or something, that's what you roll up the open end of the sock about 1.5 times, and then you have material. Then you can stretch it open with your hand and put it around your toes, and then pull it up.
Impressive.
It is. So
the skills you can learn, old dog, new tricks, right?
Well, that's the podcast. Thanks everybody for
great show
tuning in. No, I'm John Lane.
I am Will Barfield,
and we are
a
work in progress, a left-handed work in progress. So as always, we have a guest.
Oh, a great guest.
Great guest.
We're all work in progress.
We're all a work in progress. That's exactly right. So Susan, welcome. Good to see you. Been a while. Would you please introduce yourself to our audience? Yes, please.
Yeah, tell us all about you.
Thanks so much. Good to see you, John and Will. It's been too long. So my name is Susan Wall. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I am COO of a company called Corvist. And Corvist is a B2B software platform for e-commerce, for mostly manufacturers. I mean, think about the most boring kinds of products. I'm sure they're not boring to the people who are in them, but, chemicals and adhesives and paints and coatings and things of that nature. Those are the manufacturers who find our product to be very useful for them in interacting with their customers. So it's a customer portal. Transactions, e-commerce, as well as other kinds of customer service, 24/7 customer service. So that's what we do. I have a long history in marketing, and I am delighted to be here and be able to share some things. I love research. So as soon as John and Will said, "Hey, you want to do a research study with us?" I'm all in.
Yes.
Love
Well,
it.
we
Thank you.
appreciate that. So I have to ask now, I'm not exactly sure when our episode is going to air, but it will definitely air after the college football playoffs. So would you like to make a bold prediction, or you want to sit this out?
There's only one team that can win, and
And
it's in the Rose Bowl this year. It is the University of Michigan. I was fortunate enough just a few weeks ago to be in Ann Arbor for the Michigan versus Ohio State game in
that was
person.
a game.
It was crazy. It was wonderful. We had a great time. The weather was great. The most interesting part of it, I will say, is, we're taking pictures and everything, is my granddaughter, who's 6, was watching the game on television, and she wanted to know if grandma rushed the field with all the rest of the people.
Sure she did.
And what was the answer?
No, I did not climb over the fence and rush the field, but,
Not grandma.
No.
Not
So,
grandma. Not this rendition of
awesome.
grandma.
not this.
Maybe an
Yeah,
earlier version of grandma. Maybe grandma
maybe when I was
1.0 might have.
Yeah, maybe back when I was there, in grad school. That was a different time.
All right.
But
I'll say not particularly bold prediction since they're the favorite, but we'll see if it was an accurate prediction when we air, and we'll be sure to call it out. So I hope for you it comes out the way we want. Well, let's get into the pod, shall we?
Please.
So all of our longtime listeners and anyone new, will explain that we get today we'll talk about leadership traits under stress.
Yes.
And where we get those leadership traits is from the OAD assessment. And the OAD assessment is something that Will and I use in our consulting, but also on our podcast. And we like this software because why, Will?
It is highly accurate and extremely easy to administer. It eliminates social desirability distortions, and it is built to the standards of leading international psychological institutions and rating agencies, with logos all over the bottom of the page there. Talk about the fabulosity of OAD.
And in our last edited episode, the one that's on this week, my blooper, Susan, was that this was supposed to say international psychological institutions, but I wrote international psychiatric
Whoopsie doopsie.
instructions.
Detail.
Instructions. So that was my bad. But Will read this slide out loud for 47 episodes and never caught that either. So that was our collective blooper. But now we fixed it. But it catches me every time. Anyway,
it's like when you read something so many times, you
just
see what you want to see, not what's there.
Exactly. That's why you need a new set of eyes on things.
A new set of eyes, exactly. So the setup of this is, because of everything we just said, you can trust the data coming out. And that's how we have our podcast and our consulting practice. So now we get into the details. So we're going to have some fun with this, because today is going to be one of those somewhat exceptions to the rule of the leadership style matrix. So
yes,
we always kick off here. Exactly. Will, how many quadrants are there?
4.
And how many typical traits?
13.
You are on fire today.
I am. I practiced my math before we came on.
That's excellent. So in OAD, we look at two things first. We look at generalist versus specialist. We call that substance. That's kind of who the person is. And then we look at socially oriented communication style versus technically oriented communication style. And then that lands most people cleanly in a quadrant. So I am a socially oriented generalist, and I'm in the what, Will?
Builders.
And I'm a who?
Negotiator.
And you are?
Technically oriented, generalist, architect, developer.
Correct. So now today we'll break Susan down. She is a
technically oriented specialist according to her results.
Correct. And she's the
expert quadrant.
And I don't know if you remember this, but she is listed as a technical specialist, but we're going to get into that because we have we've had some dialogue about this, and that's what makes our pod so fun. So let's go a little forward. So let me turn the mic over to you, Will, and ask your question.
Yeah, so we asked this question of everyone, Susan, and you've kind of already addressed this in your commentary. How does it feel to go through this exercise and have yourself reduced to a two-dimensional data table? You enjoy being boiled down to data?
Well, as much as I love data, I feel like this is oversimplifying. In my case, it feels like it's oversimplifying. That there's a lot more nuance that you guys are capturing in the measurement than ends up getting displayed here.
Yes.
And part of it has to do with the labeling as well. I think for me, generalist versus specialist, technical versus social, those labels, I heard different things that I think they exactly mean. And so I think that's part of the interpretation as well.
Yeah, love to get into that.
Yeah, for sure. So let's break it down. So again, folks, remember our friends, the relative traits, and we look at assertiveness, extroversion, patience, and detail orientation. Our relative traits are A and D to start. Now, when A is greater than D, you're a generalist. When D is greater than A, you're a specialist. You'll notice that Susan's are stacked. When they're stacked, D wins. You go into the specialist quadrant or axis, but you are a mix of these things, because this is where the quadrants are a little overly simplified, because we oftentimes have relative traits that are stacked like this. And so we see that. And then we look at her D versus her E. The D is greater than E. That gives her that technical communication style. And then we break it down on the table here. So we're going to not talk too much more about that, because we're going to get to it inside. But we love when we have a variation, because it allows us to go beyond what the printouts tell us. So Will, this is your bit.
Oh, I'm ready. So Susan, as we discussed, your variation of this. You don't land cleanly in that bottom left quadrant. We got some blend here. So anyone, though, who takes the OAD assessment and lands in that yellow cube is going to get those generic superpowers. So not all of them are going to apply. What I'm asking you here is there one from this grouping that either you believe strongly applies or is accurate, or perhaps others have referenced when working or interacting with you, and that you would say is accurate?
The one that most represents me of these five, I think all five are pretty good, but strong analytical skills, yes, that would probably be my strongest. If you ask me what my superpower would be, that's what I would say.
Perfect.
Love it. Same question, flip side. Here we're in the kryptonite, right? Where we're under pressure, under stress, and strengths become weaknesses. Of these, which are generic and may all be accurate, is there one in here that you really agree with?
I guess we're always it's a little harder when it's, okay, how are we the other side of ourselves. For me, I know that I can come off as brusque and abrupt, and that other people take that from me. I think it comes from being direct and straightforward, but it can come off as brusque and abrupt when I don't mean it to.
Yeah.
And that's the core of our consulting practice, is especially when you have a leader and people who report to the leader, they may think the leader is displeased or something, just because oftentimes they're super focused and they're kind of brusque in their communication style. The takeaway from that is, I'm in the doghouse.
Mm-hmm.
No, or not necessarily.
What? I didn't intend that.
Yeah, but and so we like to surface these things. So that's
a great call out. Thank you, Susan.
Totally great. Yeah. So let's get more into the things that you wrote, because I think this is where we'll see some of how your takeaway is going to fall outside let's call it the printout of the system, and we're eager to hear that.
So, Susan, what will be great here, these are your expressions of the results and what you think about yourself from a leadership superpower standpoint. I'd love it if you just kind of walk me through these 4 bullets, what they mean to you. And then, depending on the where we land with this slide, may do a little Q&A with you, or may save it to the next one.
Yeah.
Okay. So first off, analysis, not paralysis. As I said, analytical skills, top of the list for me. But at the same point, I think part of what also makes this a superpower for me is that I don't get caught in it. That, you've heard of certainly analysis paralysis, and that people just are so busy and they want all the data. They want 100% of the data.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got to be comfortable. And that's where I'm like, I cross over the lines in these boxes. You've got to be comfortable with some ambiguity. Even though I like the analysis and I'm looking for the data, I'm never expecting to get 100% of the data. I will say, okay, no, we have to make a decision. We go with the best of our knowledge right now, and we move forward. And so that to me is one of the things that really does help me as a leader, because I am action oriented. I can get the groups comfortable with taking action, even though we don't know everything about what's going to happen. We don't have perfect information, or get the people comfortable that that we're taking too long to figure it out, so I can help manage both of those sides, because I see both of those sides. I think, again, a lot of that is why I've been successful in entrepreneurial situations, because you definitely have a lot of ambiguity. Things are changing, things are moving on a rapid basis, and you have to be able to accommodate that kind of ambiguity. At the same time, you have to look at what you have to learn constantly. You have to learn on a daily basis, and you can't take a long time to figure out whether or not things are working or not working. So you could pivot, because you're going to pivot multiple times in any entrepreneurial enterprise. And so I think that has really helped me. I think yes, I am straightforward and direct. I am not one, I can't play poker. Because I'm right out there. Everything that's going on. What's in my mind. I'm very straightforward and very direct. And I think that has particularly helped me in this post-COVID world, where so much of our interactions are remote interactions, and we don't have all the cues.
Yes.
And so you can't get the subtleties of somebody's body language, for example, that they're squirming under the table as they're listening to something, because you're not in the same room with them. And so you don't see the physical tension in their bodies as they're responding to something. And so one, I tell people that I'm direct and straightforward. So I lay that on the table, but then also I think it's also helped them because they know what's on my mind. And then detail and follow through. I mean, if I look across all the different jobs that I've had, I think the fact that I am detail oriented, and I do follow through, again, has really helped me be successful, because I've been able to team with people who are generalists more in that regard. And so that makes it is made for good teaming for me, of figuring out who makes for a good partner, that we balance each other and we can help each other out.
Perfect.
Beautiful. Kryptonite. So,
too fast.
Lefty overclick there. So let's, just like we did on that prior slide, Susan, would love for you to break this down, right? This is the reflection of ourselves when things are hard or challenging, when those entrepreneurial stressful moments. How and why did you choose to write what you wrote for these?
Well, so the first one really reflects that sense that I was uncomfortable with that bottom left box, that yellow box. It just didn't feel quite right to me. Because I do think of myself as more of a generalist than a specialist. I understand, the A and the D took preference, but for me, that was a little bit, that's where I was like, okay, I don't really quite get this.
Yeah, I see that.
And, the one of the things that said in my kryptonite moments was that I'm impatient. And at first I I just had a negative reaction to that. And then I started thinking and reflecting on it a little bit more, because I've heard people say, you're too patient. You wait too long, to make a change. You're too patient with people. I would have fired that person months ago, and you're still working with them, trying to get them where they want to go. What happens with me, though, I've noticed, and I think this may be what your research is tapping into, is I hit a breaking point. And so, like, I'm patient. And then when I hit that breaking point, even if it seems like a relatively small thing, I'm ready to take action now, and I'm ready to move forward. And so, so that's what I mean by then it's too much. Then I need to take action. And so I think that's where I could come across definitely as impatient.
Definitely get that. Let me ask you a question. I'm going off script a little bit, Will. If we left the word patient, impatient out and did more focus on the word driving as opposed to patience, where do you think how does that label sound to you?
So to me, I am more driving than if you said driving versus laid back, or I don't know what your opposite side of it is.
Yeah, exactly. But I think
feels better. That feels like a better fit is, yes, I'm going to make something happen. I'm not going to just wait for something to happen. And that really gets you to the next one, that action oriented is, yes, I'm going to make something happen. And again, I think, that's really helped me in the entrepreneurial world, because, you make something happen. You don't have years for this thing to work, and you got to learn and adapt. What does happen sometimes, though, is in your desire to be action oriented, sometimes I see that's really at the expense of process, because I want to get it done and move on. And so you end up either, taking on the hero role, which is not how anything can ever scale. The hero only lasts for a certain amount of time, and then you burn yourself out. So you can't be a hero. You have to put a process in place. And so I do find that that's one of my kryptonite moments is, when I take action and really just ignore the fact that there's process, and we should need to go through the process and establish that sort of baseline.
Love that.
And then the last one is, in some senses, and this gets to communication style. I think one of my kryptonite moments, and I forget exactly what it was in the wordings that really got me to this statement. I don't remember now, but that I'm a little bit of a chameleon in that I adapt the style. So whoever the leader of the organization is, and I adapt the style and I move my style to adapt. And being adaptable is a good thing. But at the same point, getting back to point number 2, I'm being patient, but then it's like I've given up too much of myself. And now I can't do it because I've been trying to accommodate their style, and then suddenly it's like, okay, I can't do this anymore. We've got to make a change here.
John, before we move on to the final slide, I do want to make a point here about what we're discussing with Susan and her profile and patience in particular. And I would say this. She and I have known each other for a while. We've interacted multiple times. We were referred and connected in a business capacity, but we've also interacted in a personal capacity. She has sent people to me to help her friends and colleagues.
Cool.
In a recruiting standpoint. When I reach out to Susan, she responds very quickly. She's a COO. She's very busy. She's got a lot going on, but she always shows speed to move. That driving piece, that assertiveness.
Yeah.
She gets back to me quickly, and we have an action plan. If I ask her for a meeting, she'll say, "Yes. What do you want to cover? Here's what I want to cover. Great. When are you available? I'm here." Bang, boom, set it up. Meeting. We may set it for 30. It's never ever 30. We'll knock it out in like 18. Because she's going to want to know, what are we going to touch on? We go through the agenda. It's not super formal, but bang, 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 let's knock it out. Great seeing you. Appreciate you. and on we go. So I wouldn't say that patient versus impatient. I would just say, driving, decisive,
towards
quick
action.
to move, and action oriented
Yeah.
has been my. It's not like we've known each other for years and
Mhm.
knitted quilts or anything together, but in our interaction, that's my takeaway from the way she operates as a professional.
And I don't know her nearly as well, but that really rings for me and sort of squares that circle we've been talking about.
So here we're just talking about this, Susan, right? Like no personality assessment is perfect. There's no clean way to drop every single human being into the 4 quadrants and there not be overlap. But the point of this exercise, the point of this podcast, the point of the consulting work that John and I do is analysis. And let's look at what this says and let's use it as a jumping off point to learn how to communicate better with others and to learn how to apply what we've gathered moving forward. That said, after you go through this experience or have gone through this experience with us, what did you pull out of this that are things that were great reminders or useful or that you can apply moving forward professionally or otherwise?
I think it's been very helpful for me to think about, is especially because we had this whole discussion about the driving, the action oriented, the patience kind of thing, is like that whole thing about, I feel like I'm patient, and then it's too much and I have to move in me. And so this has really reminded me of how much I'm not communicating to people. When I'm being patient, I'm not communicating properly with people about that I'm being patient. I need to help you along here, or we need to get this accomplished. And because I think then, for me, the idea that at a certain moment, it's too much for me. And then that's when I'm brusque, that's when I'm abrupt. And it's a surprise to the other person.
That's so interesting.
And that's because I haven't shared the fact that I'm trying to be patient, but we're not getting to where we need to get to go.
The tea kettle is boiling and they don't see it.
They don't see the fuels burning. They don't see it. That's an awesome call out. Love that. John, you want to take this one?
Sure, I'll do it. So, Susan, we're coming to the end of our time together. We so appreciate it. You yourself are a Who's Next nominee. I wonder if you have somebody in mind that you think might want to run this gauntlet with us.
I actually do. In fact, I have a number of people in mind, but let me just volunteer one for this purpose.
Perfect.
And that's a woman named Carolyn Sparano.
Carolyn, I take it. Great.
Yeah.
You know Carolyn well.
Yeah, she's super.
Yeah. Carolyn and I have worked together twice in our careers, I think for a total of more than a dozen years.
Awesome.
And super talented, super smart woman who has vast experiences. And I think that also is also reflective, introspective, would want to learn this about herself, because that's the other side of it, is you have to want to learn about yourself.
Entirely right.
And changed.
That is entirely right.
No, that's a wonderful nomination. Thank you, Susan.
For that. And I'll
John,
follow up after
connect with you about that. Yeah.
After the show, I'll do that.
Awesome.
It happens every week. Always breaks my heart. I'm John Lane.
I am Will Barfield.
And we are a work in progress.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Work in Progress is a podcast presentation of Slipshod Productions. Available on LinkedIn and YouTube. Executive produced and starring John Lane and Will Barfield. Talent booking, production, and editing by John Lane. Thanks for watching. See you next week.